Rain slammed against the glass walls of Langford Court, a luxury shopping center where designer bags cost more than some people's yearly rent. Beneath its golden awning stood a boy, shirt torn, shoes missing, face too calm for someone shivering. In the cold, Malik Carter, 15, leaned quietly against one of the marble pillars, trying to stay out of the storm. He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't begging. He just needed 5 minutes of sheltered. That's when Briggs Morrow, the head of mall security, stormed through the doors with a swagger that came from power without accountability. "Get out of here, punk. You're scaring my customers," he snapped, shoving Malik hard across the slick pavement. The boy's body hit the ground with a hollow thud, water soaking deeper into already drenched fabric. People passed by, some flinching, others scoffing, but no one stopped. Inside, the chandeliered atrium pulsed with artificial calm. Perfumed air, soft jazz, expensive perfume, and louder opinions. "Disgraceful," muttered Gwyneth Ashbury, wrapped in a cloud of designer silk and status. "They just wander in like they belong here." Her voice was sharp, theatrical, meant to be heard. A known face on charity galas and high society fundraisers. Gwyneth adjusted her diamond brooch like it was armor. "These people," she sighed, "always looking for something to steal." Malik rose without complaint. Blood trickled from one knee, but he wiped it away with the back of his hand. No curses, no fear, just quiet resilience that felt unnatural to the crowd used to seeing desperation on kids like him. He stood taller than expected, straighter. His eyes scanned the lobby, not with panic, but with precision. It unsettled them. Briggs moved in again, ready for a second shove, but before contact, a sudden crack echoed from the far end of the hall. A woman had collapsed. Her head had struck marble. Blood began to pool beneath her blonde hair. A string of pearls rolled across the floor like fallen teeth, and no one noticed, because everyone had been too busy watching the boy. The sound of luxury continued undisturbed, heels tapping polished stone, a distant violin through the speakers. The hush of credit cards sliding through machines. No one noticed her at first. The woman's fall had been sudden, silent, her body collapsing behind a decorative planter near the entrance. Her expensive heels splayed at odd angles. Her pale hand twitched once before going still. It wasn't until blood began spreading slowly across the marble that Malik saw her. She wasn't just anyone. Even through the shimmer of rain and glass, Malik recognized the face from magazine covers. At gas stations and billboards across the city, Charlotte Langford, heiress to a real estate empire. Pregnant, alone, unconscious, he sprinted toward her before anyone else even turned their heads. Kneeling at her side, Malik took off his soaked shirt and pressed it against a wound near her temple. His hands moved, fast but steady, like this wasn't the first time he'd had to react in chaos. He tilted her gently onto her side, protecting her airway, whispering calm words she couldn't hear. A small gasp escaped her lips. Uneven, strained, her lips were turning blue. "Help!" Malik shouted, voice rising above the murmur of disinterest. "Someone call an ambulance. She's bleeding." Heads finally turned. The crowd didn't move closer. They reached for their phones instead. In seconds, the air thickened with suspicion. Gwyneth Ashbury arrived with perfect timing, clacking over in 4-inch heels. Her gasp was loud enough to draw attention. "Oh my God, he attacked her." It was all she needed to say. The narrative shifted instantly. Phones that could have dialed 911 now recorded video instead. Multiple angles. No context. Mall security. Guard Briggs stormed over, red-faced and already reaching for Malik's arm. "What the hell did you do to her, you little?" he growled, twisting Malik's arm behind his back before the boy could respond. "I didn't." She was already down. "I helped." Malik's voice cracked, but he didn't stop applying pressure to Charlotte's wound, even as Briggs yanked him backward. "She's bleeding because of you," someone shouted. "No. Look at her head." She fell. "You expect us to believe a kid like you just happened to be here? Shirtless? Hiding behind the plants?" Malik said nothing more. There was no use. The screams got louder. Gwyneth stepped into frame again, dramatic and smug. "I told them. These people come here to prey on the weak." Charlotte's pearls glistened in the puddle beside her. One by one, they rolled past Malik's knees, and still he knelt, his wrists now locked behind him, keeping pressure on the wound. Eyes on her face. breathing in sync with her struggling chest, that he wasn't saving her because someone asked. He wasn't doing it to be seen, that he was doing it because it was the right thing. And the people around him? They didn't see a boy saving a life. They saw what they wanted to see. Sirens wailed outside, drawing closer. But the damage was already done. Malik Carter was no longer the boy under the awning. He was now the villain in 1,000 strangers' screens. The cell reeked of bleach and rust, the kind of smell that clung to your clothes, your lungs, your soul. Malik Carter sat against the far wall, his knees pulled close, the fabric of his borrowed hoodie 2 sizes too big. Around him, older men traded stories like prison cards. Who got caught? Who got away? Who didn't stand a chance? What did they book you for, kid? Someone asked. Malik didn't answer. He was busy memorizing the exact model of camera mounted above the holding area, noting that its lens was dusty, which meant it likely hadn't worked in weeks. Back at Langford Court, the version of the story told on news stations had already been set in stone. Gwyneth Ashbury, now styled as socialite, an eyewitness, had given 2 interviews by noon. Draped in pearls and certainty, she told the press that a homeless teenager had stalked Charlotte Langford and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The words hit hard. On every screen, every headline, security guard Briggs Morrow was being hailed as a hero for detaining the suspect before he could escape. Malik's mugshot hit social media before he even knew it was taken. By the time Charlotte made it to surgery, public opinion had already turned into a viral judgment that in the detective's office, Detective Greer flipped through a thin file labeled Carter, Malik, suspected assault, no ID, no address, prior incident for trespassing, she muttered. Across the table, Malik studied her carefully. She smelled like burnt coffee and wore a wedding ring she kept turning in slow circles, nervous habit. Her partner, Detective Sims, was louder, impatient. He slammed the folder shut. Here's how this works. You talk, maybe we cut a deal. I'd like to make a phone call, Malik said softly. Sims smirked. To who? You don't even have shoes. The boy didn't respond. Instead, his gaze fixed on the case photos spread across the table. One of them, a still frame of Charlotte's fall, caught his attention. The angle wasn't right. She hadn't stumbled forward. She'd gone backward, like she was yanked or shoved. Her arms weren't out to break the fall. There was bruising on her wrist, not her hands. He remembered. All of it, every second. My mother was a nurse, Malik said quietly. She taught me how to tell the difference between a seizure, a faint, and a concussion. Sims scoffed, but Greer paused. What are you saying? She didn't collapse. She was pushed. In that moment, something shifted, not in the room, but inside Malik. He didn't need them to believe him, that he needed them to underestimate him. Let them think he was just a scared, scrappy kid from nowhere. Let them think he was defenseless. Because while Gwyneth played the camera and Briggs soaked in applause, Malik Carter was gathering evidence with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose and nothing clouding his judgment. Outside the station, a storm gathered in more ways than one. And this time, the boy everyone discarded wasn't just planning to survive it. He was planning to expose it. The interrogation room was built for intimidation, steel chairs that scraped too loud, a single flickering light, and walls that echoed everything. Twice, Malik Carter sat silently, his wrists still cuffed, eyes steady on the detectives who thought he'd cracked. Detective Sims leaned in close. You think just sitting there looking calm's gonna save you? I asked for a lawyer, Malik said again, tone calm, unwavering. The door swung open hard enough to rattle the glass. In stepped a man in a tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, and shoes that clicked like punctuation. Luther Raines. A name the entire city's legal system knew. Former prosecutor. Now the defense attorney of choice for the impossible. My client won't say another word, Luther said, walking in like he owned the precinct. And I suggest the 2 of you stop violating his rights before we add civil damages to the list. Sims scoffed. He's a street kid. What? Someone digging into their charity fund for this one? No, Luther replied, flipping open a leather portfolio. He has a witness. A very wealthy one. He didn't need to say the name. They all knew. Raines turned to Malik and nodded. Start from the beginning. Every detail. Leave nothing out. Malik did. Not with drama, not with tears, but with precision. He described the moment Charlotte Langford collapsed, the way her knees buckled, the way her hand struck the planter first, not the ground. He described the mark on her wrist, red, shaped like fingers. He explained the awkward fall angle, backward, not forward. He spoke like a surgeon explaining a cut. She did not fall naturally, he said. Someone pushed her. Detective Greer glanced at the photo evidence again, something flickering behind her eyes. Doubt. She's in surgery, Rain said flatly. But if she survives, her statement will matter. Until then, we have one chance to get ahead of this lie. He turned towards Sims. Get them all footage. All of it. Cameras 7 through 12. Sims rolled his eyes. You think this is a crime scene? This was a kid trespassing. No, Rains cut in. This was a setup. That word hung in the air. Setup. Malik shifted slightly in his chair, no longer the passive victim. There was something sharp about the way he observed everyone. Like he wasn't just answering questions, but studying the questions themselves. Outside the room, Gwyneth Ashbury gave her third interview of the day, comparing Malik to those troubled boys you hear about in headlines. Briggs, meanwhile, received job offers from private security firms who loved how decisively he acted. But inside the precinct, everything was shifting, because the boy they tried to pin the blame on had just introduced doubt. A sliver. Enough, detective. Greer stood slowly. Let's get the security feeds pulled. If there's even a shred of what this kid says in that footage, we've got a bigger problem. As the officers left, Luther leaned toward Malik. You know what's interesting? He said quietly. You're not just innocent. You're observant. You noticed more in 60 seconds than most officers see in a week. Malik looked up. People like me don't get to be wrong. We don't get second chances. Rain studied the boy. Then let's make sure you don't need one. The conference room on the top floor of Luther Rain's law firm wasn't designed for comfort. It was built for confrontation. The floor-to-ceiling glass revealed a sweeping view of the city, but all eyes were locked on the 60-inch screen mounted to the far wall. The air inside was thick with tension. Gwyneth Ashbury in her designer pantsuit, arms crossed. Briggs shifting in his chair. Two detectives seated across from them, stone-faced, to the end of the long table. Malik sat quietly beside Rains. His expression unreadable, but his presence undeniable. Let's begin, Rains said, remote in hand. Camera 7. Timestamp 3:42 p.m. The footage flickered to life. A wide-angle shot of the mall's marble promenade. Charlotte Langford, pregnant, walking slowly toward the decorative planters. Then, from behind a column, Briggs appeared. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't alarmed. He was calculating that he walked up behind her and, with no hesitation, shoved her. Hard. Her head struck the marble. Her body folded. Gasps rippled through the room. That's not, Briggs began, but Rains clicked again. Camera 12. Different angle. Same time. The same footage, but this time crystal clear. Briggs watching her, phone still in hand. Then the shove. No accident. No misinterpretation. You said she just collapsed, one of the detectives murmured. You swore under oath. I panicked, Briggs stammered. I didn't mean to. She looked like she was in trouble already. No. Malik spoke, voice steady. You waited. You made sure no one was watching. You pushed her because someone told you to. Rains placed a printout in front of the detectives. 3 calls. 20 minutes before the incident. All from Ms. Ashbury's phone to Mr. Briggs. Gwyneth's face was ghost white. That proves nothing. I make dozens of calls a day. Then, explained the text message, Rains said, tapping the second page. She'll be at the mall. Make sure it looks like an accident. 50 grand if it convinces the doctors. No, that's fabricated, digital forensics already. Confirmed its origin. It was your phone. And the bank transfers. Rains held up another document. 5 payments to Briggs. 6 months. All from shell charities you control. One of the reporters present stood to record. The detectives didn't stop him. Gwyneth's polished facade crumbled. Briggs dropped his face into his hands. I was just doing what she told me. He shouted. She promised a referral. Better work, said it wouldn't hurt anyone. She was pregnant, Malik said softly. With twins. His voice wasn't angry. It was precise. Gwyneth turned toward him, her face twisted. You think you understand anything about this world? You don't belong here. You never will. Rains stood, but Malik gently raised his hand. Let her finish. No, Gwyneth hissed. I won't be lectured by a child who grew up in a shelter. She had everything: money, legacy, a name. Some of us are just trying to survive. So you tried to kill her? Malik asked. Because her children were going to have a future you didn't? The room fell silent as Charlotte's voice broke through the door. She didn't just try, she said, stepping in slowly, hands trembling, her hospital gown hidden under a beige coat. She nearly succeeded. Gasps again, not just from shock, but from the weight of her presence. Her body was weak, but her voice was fire. I trusted you, Gwyneth. You sat in my home. You held my first ultrasound. And now, my babies are fighting for their lives because you thought they had too much. Gwyneth's last defense broke. Her eyes darted to the door, looking for an exit. There wasn't one. Malik stood then, not to accuse, but to be seen. To everyone who said I was the danger that day, he said, looking directly at the detectives. The press, even the law firm staff watching from the back. Remember this. You looked at me and decided who I was before I even opened my mouth. Now, no one spoke. You saw what you wanted to see. But truth doesn't change because of what you're comfortable believing. Rains rested a hand on Malik's shoulder. In that moment, the shift was complete. Malik wasn't a suspect anymore. He wasn't even a bystander. He had become the voice that broke the system's silence. The courtroom was not built for moments like this. Not for betrayal between friends. Not for truth laid bare under fluorescent light. Charlotte Langford entered slowly, supported by a nurse, her movements careful but determined. Though the trauma still echoed in her body, the resolve in her eyes was unmistakable. Her twins had survived the attempted attack. She was no longer a patient. She was a witness. Gwyneth Ashbury sat stiff in the defendant's chair, her expression drained of the effortless elegance she once wore like a shield. Beside her, Briggs looked hollow, his hands clenched but trembling. The silence in the room was a vacuum, waiting to be filled. I need to speak, Charlotte said to the judge, who nodded solemnly. She turned to Gwyneth first. I opened my home to you. I confided in you. I shared my hopes for my children, she said, her voice raw. And you turned that trust into a weapon. Gwyneth did not respond. She stared forward, lips tight, as though clinging to the last fragments of her pride. Rains stood, clearing his throat. We have presented to the court security footage, verified financial records, and digital communications tying both defendants to conspiracy, attempted murder, and charitable fraud. But today is not only about what they did. It is about who prevented a tragedy. He motioned gently to Malik, seated at the front of the gallery. Malik rose, straight-backed. Though he wore borrowed clothes and bore no title, every person in the room was watching him now. Charlotte turned to him. You were the only one who saw me. The only one who chose compassion over fear. You saved not just my life, but the lives of my children. Twice. The judge nodded. Young man, you acted with bravery, intelligence, and restraint under extraordinary pressure. Is there anything you would like to say? Malik hesitated, then stepped forward. I do not want revenge, he said quietly. I want something better. I want justice, the kind that leaves no one invisible. His eyes met Gwyneth's, then Briggs's. You thought I would disappear, that your money, your stories, your power would erase me. But I am still standing, and I remember everything. The judge ordered the arrests to proceed. As the bailiffs moved toward Gwyneth and Briggs, cameras clicked from the back of the room. The news was already spreading. Gwyneth Ashbury, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, attempted murder, and embezzlement of nonprofit funds. She did not speak. She did not cry. She only looked at Charlotte one last time. And Charlotte did not look back as the handcuffs clicked into place. Malik remained still. Justice had arrived. But he knew that punishment alone was not the answer. Later that afternoon, outside the courthouse, Charlotte and Rains met Malik on the steps. She placed a thick envelope into his hands, sealed, official, and life-altering. It is your acceptance to the medical initiative program, she said. Full tuition, residency placement, anywhere you choose. Malik stared at it for a long moment. Then, finally, he spoke. I want to specialize in emergency medicine. Charlotte blinked, caught off guard. Any particular reason? Because people do not schedule their worst day, Malik replied. They just survive it. And I want to be there when it happens, not to save them, but to see them. Rains nodded approvingly. You will not only save lives, Malik. You will change the way they are valued. Charlotte smiled, emotion tightening her voice. My children will grow up knowing that kindness is not weakness. That help can come from anyone, anywhere. They will grow up knowing your name. In that moment, no applause was needed. No headlines. No hashtags. Malik had already won. His legacy would not be written in anger, but in purpose. What Gwyneth and Briggs tried to destroy had instead given birth to something greater. Not just a future for Malik, but a pathway for others like him. Justice, Malik understood now, was not about watching others fall. It was about standing so tall they could never ignore you again. 5 years later, the halls of Northbridge General echoed with urgency, but within that rhythm, one figure moved with quiet confidence. Dr. Malik Dorsey now wore a white coat stitched with his name, not as a symbol of status, but of earned trust. Nurses greeted him with respect. Patients smiled, even in pain. Among his peers, Malik was known not only for his sharp clinical instincts, but for something rarer, an ability to see each human being before the diagnosis. At 20 years old, he was already in his residency for emergency medicine. Outside exam room 6, 2 children ran toward him. Uncle Malik. They shouted in unison. Henry and Elsie, now 5, with boundless energy and matching dimples that he knelt to their height, accepting their tight hugs as Charlotte approached slowly, her third pregnancy visible beneath her winter coat. She placed a protective hand over her stomach and smiled. They still remember the exact way you held my hand when I was in labor, she said. They remember because you told them the truth, Malik replied. And truth stays. The hospital's newest wing bore a name carved into brushed steel, the Hartwell Dorsey Foundation for Medical Opportunity. What began as one scholarship had grown into a full program, offering 50 full medical grants per year to underprivileged youth. Malik reviewed applicants himself. He knew how to recognize invisible brilliance, the kind that hides behind survival and waits for one open door. Later that night, in the quiet of his apartment overlooking the city, Malik opened his mail. Among the bills and paperwork sat a single envelope marked with a correctional facility stamp. The letter was from Gwyneth Ashbury. Dr. Dorsey, I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not expect it. But I want you to know something. I used to believe power was control. You proved power is purpose. And that truth haunts me more than any sentence the court could give. Malik folded the letter carefully and slid it into a drawer, not to forget it, but to remember what hate could not defeat. On his wall hung 3 things: his framed medical degree, a photo of Charlotte with Henry and Elsie on the day of their school play, and a note his mother once wrote. You were not born to blend in. You were born to see clearly. He stared at the photo. 5 years ago, he was dragged out of a luxury mall in handcuffs, labeled a danger. Today, he walked freely in sterile corridors, saving lives that society once told him he was unworthy to be near. Some believed justice was punishment. Malik understood something deeper. True justice was visibility. It was living so fully, with such undeniable purpose, that no lie could shrink you back down again. In the end, he did not destroy those who hurt him, that he simply built a life that made them irrelevant.